started like this. You're good. Look. I started like this. Shake your bones, get bit. I am a guy who plays CharmCityBipper. Quis The Vndl. Marquis is the name my mama gave me. I'm here in a space and time with a brother that is one of the earlier interviews of this thing that I've been doing. You know, one of the earlier supporters, a visionary in his own right in many ways, and blessed to share this moment with you. And many other ones.
Great to be here, man.
So, you know, it's all right. Absolutely. But it has been a lot doing this podcast. Doing the work that I do in the community, the work you do in the community is a lot that it takes. A lot of faith, a lot of patience, a lot of detachment. But that doesn't mean that you always have them or remember that they are required. Yes, I would like to ask you, how has your journey with joy been thus far?
That's a loaded question.
It's a very loaded question. I want to see where you go first. Where is he going to go, y'all?
I mean, how's my journey with joy been so far? I think my journey with joy has been a roller coaster. How do you say the word? Journey with joy has been a roller coaster. It's one of those things where it's like you're building something that you know is going to impact millions of students, millions of families, and it is sometimes slow climb. Sometimes it is like the fast descent into like, I don't know where this is going next, just because like you're learning from real people about like what the real needs are around reading, and you know, you adjust based on what you learn, what you experience, what you know. And so it's been good. I mean, I think where we are right now in terms of, I think the last time we had a chance to sit down, we were very much in, this is the vision. This is the vision. This is this is why we exist. And now we actually have real traction. We actually have a real reading clinic that is a virtual reading clinic that actually helps students become better readers, minute by minute, relationship by relationship, moment by moment. And it's really exciting to see the community come a part of the vision, because that was the whole idea at the very beginning, was like, how do we create a community-centered solution that really address real reading challenges that our students and families face. And what we see right now is the community responding. It's like, yeah, we need this thing. And the community is responding in other ways. It's like, yeah, we want to be a part of supporting and uplifting and propping this up in many places to make sure that anyone who has the need gets access to it. And so I'm grateful just to be strapped in on this roller coaster, just to see how God is fanning the flame, honestly. And really, I think it's one of those things where it's like, what's the phrase? Like the whole universe conspires to push or support you on to the thing that you were supposed to be doing. And I think this is an example of that for me, you know? It's a lot.
Indeed. It's very living.
Yeah.
It's a very living body. It's interesting how what we create becomes an extension of us.
Yeah.
And they're all business things. Creations are a form of business, and it becomes personal.
Yeah.
And so that's where like the detachment comes from me. It's like, am I gonna get mad every time somebody talk about my mama? Or like elevate in other ways? Joy represents a lot for me. Why literacy? Why this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky. I don't believe in luck, but I feel lucky. That's weird to say that. I grew up in a community where cats literally put their resources together to do stuff that schools weren't doing. The only reason I know how to read today is because I learned how to read before I went to school. And that's because I had cats in the church community, cats at the Boys and Girls Club, my own family really thinking about like, what does this kid need in order to get a good start in life? And they figured that out before I had a chance to actually engage with the public school system. And so in many ways, I feel really lucky. And I had like, probably I would say in Norfolk, Virginia, I had a premier education in a public school, Black city, Black educators. And the reason why I was able to benefit from just the excellent education that I was afforded in that system was because I knew how to read. You know, like some of our schools are really, 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 really good if you can read. And I learned that on the flip side when I became a classroom teacher. I taught reading first grade, second grade, fourth grade, and I realized why many kids can't read. It's not the kids. It's the systems, is the adult practices, is the decisions that we make around curriculum, is the patience, the care, the concern that we actually give to the students and the families that are in our spaces, you know. And we have an opportunity to actually influence that. The greatest joy that I ever experienced was teaching a kid how to read. Just to see the smile come on their face when they're able to actually decode, figure out, you know, how sound and and symbol work together, how letter patterns actually work together to create different sounds. It's just like you see the power that they feel, the confidence in their eyes, the confidence in their voice when they're able to actually read anything that they want to. Create any sentence that they want to, express in any way that they want to, because they have the language, they have the tools, they have the formula, to be able to both decode and encode, you know. And so literacy is important just because, you know, it is our access to information, as our access to knowledge, and, you know, as a community that has been systematically, intentionally denied the access for years, decades, centuries, you know, and still today, right, in very, very real ways, it is important for my voice as a Black man to be talking about this thing and not moving from it, because our kids need to read. I mean, one of the realities that we have right now is that, like, many of our students in our communities are first, second generation readers. And that means something in terms of, like, the work that we have to do to make sure that they get all that they need in order to become the confident readers that they need in order to become lifelong learners. And I think people are content with moving on and leaving some folks behind. I'm not. I think it's important for all of us to be having this conversation, from the barbershop to the church house to the Boys and Girls Club to YMCA to grandma's house, auntie, you know, all of them.
To places people don't want to talk about.
Places people don't want to talk about, you know what I'm saying?
And it impacts all the places.
It impacts all the places.
The part that I've been sitting with the most is, like, criminals have children too. I have a friend who did a podcast with me, and her father spent most of her upbringing in jail.
Yeah.
But he still very much had a strong impact on her understandings. It wasn't all negative, like the story often goes, where it's like, oh, well, the parent didn't make good choices, so he's a bad. No, it's like he impacted her with some character lessons that she carries on, and now she wants to do impactful work that helps children of the incarcerated, helps the incarcerated who are stepping out and trying to avoid recidivism or going back to prison.
That's the real goal, right? The goal is not to get kids to read just to get kids to read. The goal is to get kids to read so that they become lifelong learners and actually ideate the solutions to real community challenges that they see, you know, from firsthand experience, like the young lady that you're just talking about. Like, I have a parental unit who has been impacted by the incarceration system, and I'm thinking about folks who are impacted all around: the kids, the parent, you know, the family, the loved ones. And so I'm going to use all the gift that my father gave me, even through his circumstance, to actually come up with something that's actually going to be beneficial beyond me. Like, that's what we want to see, and that can happen family by family, community by community. And it starts with how much we actually invest folks in the practice of learning, in the art of learning, you know. And I think it starts with a caring adult who says, like, yo, this is important. You know, despite what else we see out here on TikTok, social media, like, this is you being able to being able to access information and being able to critically think, critically read, critically write. All those things are going to be important for you in order to be just successful in life. And not just successful in life, like, you actually thrive. You know, you get to a place of joy, of well-being, because that's the real goal. Is like folks to actually feel as though that they're taken care of and actually have the tools to be able to engineer that for themselves. I'm not saying it's all easy, but it does start with your ability to decode, honestly.
It's empowering. I laugh because when I struggled in math class, it was because I didn't understand the terms.
Yeah.
We're talking reciprocal. We're talking parallelogram. We're talking, I know parallel to be one thing. You say parallelogram. If I'm really not paying attention, I'm not seeing where these things.
Your parallels.
I'm not seeing where they
words.
I'm not seeing how they even relate. I'm not understanding. I'm not caring. And then it's like the relationship part is the part that I enjoy the most about joy.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the most about a lot of spaces where you put relationship at the center.
Yep.
Because the person is ultimately what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And the way we deal with the person is going to be the outcomes we see in society.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just the reminder that all learning is both social and emotional, right? There's like the social aspect to it in terms of, like, you know, the first person introducing content to me is that person I have to connect with, right? You know, the teacher, whether it's my teacher, my parents, some other adult, like I got to connect with you before I care about the thing that you're talking about. And I think I think part of our special sauce in what we do at Joy Education is we do uplift relationships first, because that's the foundation for all learning. So we will spend time actually getting to know you as a person, getting to know what you're interested in, what you care about, like your quirks. And I'm going to share of myself too, you know, as a person showing up in this tutoring space, or classroom, wherever it is. Like I'm gonna make myself known too, because you got to connect with me, and I need to connect with you in order for us to develop what we call a learning partnership. You know, an actual alliance that's built off of cognitive insight. And I need to know how you think, you know, in order to support you in using that. To solve this next tricky thing, or to do something that was previously difficult. And I think part of that, or all of that starts or hinges upon the quality of the relationship that we actually have with one another. And so that's what I think about, like reading, doing something as difficult as learning how to read. It starts with you actually actually being cared for by the person who's introducing, you know, this joint to you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we double down on relationships on purpose. I mean, my earliest experience in school, you know, the people that I remember are the things, I mean, that are the adults, you know, are the people in the classroom who are like, took the time to, you know, notice something different about me, you know, notice something unique about me. And that invested me to keep learning until I connected with the kids, my peers, right? And then the peer relationship was the strongest that I had. And, you know, if you are able to invest peers in supporting one another in the learning space, like, you know, that's a power that can't be touched, that can't be matched.
Look, I laugh. In high school, and not even just in high school, as early as 4th grade, we had clubs. So we had like a Uno club. We had a 24 club with the math games. We had a club based around chess, and all of these different games that we could explore and kind of compete with each other at these mental competitions. And it was friendly. It was guided by an elder or guided by a teacher. At times we went off track, we went off the rails. There was a little shame and a little bullying that enters spaces, unfortunately. But the foundation of it, it's like what I've witnessed a lot in my own experience in education is the baby has been thrown out with the bathwater. And just get some fresh bathwater. Like we really just need a sense of, we still got a tub.
Yeah.
We still got a lot of things we can build on. And
Yeah.
these programs, it's this funny. The funnier part for me is like, I would be intimidated to start a chess club.
Yeah.
But I'm forgetting that they know as much about chess as I do.
Yeah.
And we can learn together.
Yeah.
And as educators, taking that opportunity to be egoless, be stupid with the kids, be stupid, quote unquote, right? Not have all the answers. Like come into the space and be like, hey, I actually don't know that move. I like that you're interested in it. Maybe you'll look that up later and bring some information back to the collective.
Right.
Like these moments of real-time community building. But I'm thinking about that as well. Like, and your experience as an educator, what were some things that you brought to space that you saw have a major impact and benefit on the youth?
I mean, literally starting with, who are you?
It's so funny like, know their names.
Know their names, like know their families' names, and not just that, but like know, you know, why they show up to the space every day. You know what they care about. I think know what their interests and hobbies is. And why do I say that? Is just because like those are the things that we actually connect around as human beings, right? Those are the things that, you know what I mean? And I can't see myself as not a human being when I'm working with like little people. They're just younger, smaller, tinier human beings, but they're human beings, just that. You know what I mean? And so like to be able to like foster human connection first is the thing. It was my bread and butter in the classroom. It's my bread and butter running a virtual reading clinic. This is the idea that people don't care about what you know unless they know that you care. And so let's start with the space of care. Let's start with the idea that we can create a space where you feel safe enough to fail. You feel safe enough to fall. I feel safe enough to, you know, to try to teach something that might have been tricky for me as a learner, you know, like all those things is like, how do we create a place for us to be psychologically and physically safe? And that takes work, that takes time, that takes intentionality. But that's the thing that has been successful for me as a classroom teacher, as a school leader. Same thing with families that I've been working with, you know what I mean? Like getting a chance to know their backstory, like why they show up to the space, working with grandma who has a kiddo in Chicago, you know, who's really concerned about their reading, like grandma's concerned for a reason. Like get her to know her backstory, because she's going to be the person that I work with the most closely to support a student, you know. And so I think the relationships, and then like really being clear around like, you know, what does it look like for kids to find meaning and joy in the thing that we're learning. You know, reading, you know, I care a lot about reading, clearly. I run a virtual reading clinic. Reading, you know, is a space where some people feel, you know, that it is really easy for them, or it comes naturally, whatever that means. Some people don't. Some people hate it with a passion. Some people avoid it, you know, and there are lots of reasons to why. I mentioned before, like, you know, if you're a first or second generation reader and haven't seen a ton of folks in your family, like, fall in love with this idea of books, then maybe that's new for you. Maybe that's something that is real weird for you. And so like investing students in the why, like why do we actually care about this? I had these 4 goals for my kids when I taught first and second and fourth grade. It was like, you know, number 1, become great readers. Number 2, go to the next grade. Number 3, become great leaders. You know, and then, you know, the 4th one is like, you fill in the blank, whether it's college, career, whatever. But like the idea is just like all this stuff that connects to something that you actually care about, whether it's like you creating something in your community because you've been impacted by the incarceration system as a student, and now you actually want to, you know, take all of your knowledge and your learning to create a community-centered solution so you can help other kids whose parents are in jail. Like, that's the whole purpose of learning. So investing in them, so relationships, investing them in the why, and then getting into the real stuff, which is like, how do you build kids' skills? Like, kids want to grow in their skill. Like, give them like real concrete strategies that they can feel successful with real early on. And that's what we do at Joy Education through our reading clinic. Is like we, you know, get to know the student, we invest them in the why, and then we actually teach real concrete skills that help them to grow their fluency as a reader. Their comprehension skills as a reader, their ability to actually decode and recognize words, letter names, sound, correspondence, like all those things.
Real tools.
Like real tools. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And that's actually the funniest part for me. Like, I didn't realize how many tools were needed to break down a word.
Yeah.
And how many tools you can put in place, and speech coaches, these different things that I was like, oh, because it's assumed that everyone just has it natural. But that's often it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have access to a parent who's like, I want you to read more. I'm going to get you in a library. You got a library card before you got toys type of energy. And the space that we're in is very interesting for a lot of reasons. I've seen firsthand the growth of our students and the growth of students around me. Just impacted by, and even the joy, like, going back to the joy as a concept, but the joy that kids have talking about a book that they enjoy. Like, I laugh at all of the times I'm walking in a room and I'm like, who's watching TikTok? Who's playing video games for hours? And then I'm like, why don't I ever just ask them, what's your favorite book? And like give them time to think about it, because that's also the impatience of me as an adult. So I was like, oh, maybe he doesn't have one. Let's switch the topic. But I waited one time and they gave me Harry Potter. I'm like, oh, you enjoy Harry Potter? Oh, you like the Divergent series? Oh, you like whatever fiction series it is? And it's like a lot of kids doing a lot of things that aren't being discussed. So because those things aren't being put in the forefront, I can put that in the background at some point and forget I did it.
Yeah. It makes me think about like one of my favorite conversations with kids is just to talk about like their book preference, like what kind of books do you actually like? So when we show up to community fairs, and you know this, like we show up with comic books all the time. Comic books are just really cool opportunities to get people's attention, whether it's a student or a family member. But one of my favorite conversations is like, you know, we're signing up people for a virtual reading clinic. We have these comics books that we give away, and then you have some students who are like, "Ooh, cool. Which ones do you have?" And they give me like all the titles that I'm missing from my table. And then you have students who are like, "Yeah, I hate comic books," which is like the greatest conversation ever, because it's like, great, you have preference. Because that's what we want our kids to get to, is a place where they actually have preference about like what it is that they want to continue to engage in. Because that signals lifelong learning for me. Like, you know what to discard, right?
You know what isn't for you. It's learning yourself.
Learning yourself. The greatest, one of the greatest, I would say, kind of tools that we teach our students early on, especially our early readers, is like, how do you find a book that you're interested in, and then how do you abandon a book that you're not interested in? Like, what is the decision-making criteria that you use to let you know that this is not something that is actually worth me continuing to read? But like, that's the goal. It's like we're not trying to develop like this compliance-driven culture where you have to read the thing that's in front of you. It's like, no, what we're trying to do is give you the keys to the building so you can choose which one actually aligns to your interest, your passion, the area that makes sense for you. Because that thing just continues to grow and develop. And
it shows up in other spaces.
It shows up in other spaces.
I got to finish every book I start. No, you don't. You finish the books you enjoy. You finish the book that's speaking to you.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't get to finish the book that's speaking to you.
Yeah.
But you know you started it. And even at small bites. Like I used to get upset because I would want to eat a book. I want the whole thing done in a day. That wasn't realistic. But it's also this thing of like the accomplishment of having it done, and then perfectionism is if I can't read 40 pages in an hour I set, I feel away. When I was, I think in 3rd grade, we were doing the reading test where you had to read at a certain speed. And it kind of just put me off. But I always love audiobooks. And it made me laugh because I was like, I remember checking out tapes and like having the tapes in the house and listening to them. And now I have Audible and I'm just like, oh, this is beautiful. But it's so many ways to approach it.
So many ways. And I think that's the part is like, how do you support students with like diversifying their toolkit? You know, like the goal is for you to be able to like read and learn and absorb information and think critically about it. All right. And like the tools that you use to do that could be many. Right. It could be many. It could be this physical book in front of you. It could be your Kindle. It could be this audio book that you use to support you as you read it. But it's like the goal is for you to fall in love with it. I mean, we had a conversation before around, just coming back to this conversation around preference, like, you know, one of my favorite books that I taught with my 4th graders is Christopher Paul Curtis's But Not Buddy, Why Watson's Go to Birmingham, all that. But Not Buddy is like one of my favorites to teach. When I was teaching in 4th grade, full of like kids, all my students were black and brown boys and girls, and it was really, really fun to read that book with them. And talk to another black man who had that book introduced to him early on, and you hated it.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
And it was so many funny, it's funny as I recount like why I disliked it. It was who was reading it.
Sure.
It was the ways it was read.
Yeah.
It was the forced nature. Like read this many pages by this point of the week. Like come back in and check in with us, and we want to check it off on the. Like, oh, this is very gross. And then thinking about like those sit downs. Oh, don't get out of your seat. Why are you fidgety? Why are you so loud? I'm like, oh wow, like and this is my classmates I'm watching. I'm the quiet one just observing. Like you're reading the book forcefully. You're an older white gentleman, not to make race a thing, but to read a story as colorful, to put it simply, as But Not Buddy, and explore these different themes. Even Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Reading the parts about them eating mud. Reading To Kill a Mockingbird in high school. And watching the white kids kind of twist and turn when we get to the N-word. And the teacher saying, read it anyway. Like those moments are very traumatic for people, as well as read alouds. And that had been the thing that I really enjoyed when I started in the clinic with you, where I'm like, wow, giving them an opportunity to read aloud and safely read aloud. Because read alouds are actually one of the things that's stopping a lot of people from wanting to do it. I saw someone's spirit break in high school, and I gotta say it that way.
I mean, what you're talking about is like, you know, the cool part about what you're saying is like it's also like research shares that like that popcorn reading that we do, read alouds in class are not really effective in helping kids, especially like if students are struggling to read, they're hearing it. You know, we're supposed to model fluency all the time, and so read alouds is just not a great strategy. But to the point that you mentioned though is like, let me rephrase that. Read alouds by teachers are really supportive. Read alouds where we do this popcorn reading, and then kids feel that like I'm uncovered, I'm embarrassed because I'm struggling to sound out this word. That doesn't feel good for a student. It doesn't create a psychological safe environment. Like that's something to your brain that doesn't make it feel safe enough to learn, and it's just not effective. But say all that to say that.
Right.
But like what you're talking about though is like the shared reading space where like kids get a chance to do multiple reads of a same text and build their confidence over time because we read it a couple of times and you get direct support with it. Like that can build confidence.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful when done right.
Yeah. But it's like how do you that's what we do at Joy Education is we create an environment that feels safe enough for you to learn. And then we use what we call evidence-based resources, evidence-based approaches to learning What that means is that we know it works based on the research to help you to learn. And it's not like it's magic, but it's magic in the sense that like it works if you do it consistently. If you focus on a relationship, give kids and approach the kids with instruction in the way that research says it works best, honoring their culture, honoring their identity, teaching skills explicitly, giving students a chance to practice in a guided way. Like kids grow. I think about it this way, like when we set the expectations high for students and give them the actual support and resources and the tools to meet it, they rise to the occasion every time. Learning has never been about a kid never being able to learn. It's about how much the adult is willing to go to make sure that that student is able to get what they need in the way that they need it best. Not necessarily in the way that I think as an adult. That's why it's like that relationship piece takes time. Because I could have a strategy that has worked for several students over here to the left, but like you were just different, and that's okay. Yeah. It is on me as an adult, a caring adult in your community, to understand like your difference and honor your difference, not necessarily make it like a deviation. You know, it's like, yeah, like I expect every learner to be different, and so I'm waiting for the difference to show up, and I'm waiting to be able to like learn and respond. And as an adult, I need to have that growth mindset to say that I can get better at my ways of approaching students and supporting students. And that's what we try to model at the clinic, is like, you know, in the ways that we want our students to have this growth mindset that they can get better at any skill. Us as an adults, like we want to get better at working with kids, working with families to really understand like what they need, how they learn best, and then like meeting them right there. Yeah. It ain't rocket science, but it does require intentionality. You know what I mean?
As does everything that we're blessed to experience.
Yeah.
And that's why this time is so interesting for me. Because there are things that we can experience without intention, but it's often at the hands of someone else or something else, right? I don't have to have much intention to find joy in my iPhone. Right. Because it's just going to come to me eventually. Right. Like I can press that one app, it has a camera on it, I'm going to just scroll. Not a lot of intention there. And then hours go by. If I don't have something I was going on there for. And sometimes I'm going on there with intention and losing my sense of it. So in this era of distraction, I just would like to give anybody out there this question. You know where your kids at? But I would like to give anybody out there hope and understanding that you don't have to lock in with all the distraction. You don't have to keep up with as much as you think you do. I laughed when I first started the podcast. People were like, oh, you put up so many clips. I was like, I don't actually expect you to watch all of them. Like, I don't expect you to keep up. That's the point, because it lives. It's like books that I haven't read yet. I'll get to them when I need them. And I have the faith as well that they'll give me the messages I need when I sit down with them. Yeah. We talk about elimination of hurry. This is I keep saying funny, hurry. But this is a new book that has entered my collection, and you're starting it. But I think about how I tried to rush through that book. The book is about not hurrying, about slowing down. And I'm like, I got to get to page 100. But like, what is this? Yeah. So that shows up in so many spaces. And oftentimes that's the cause of anxiety. That's the cause of some of the reading difficulties. Yeah. My personal experience.
Yeah, the anxiety is a big deal. I mean, that's just imagine like what it feels like to have like all the anxiety that you know that you've experienced in life, right? Just bottled up, and having to work through that anxiety to do something that is intellectually challenging. Like who's going to be successful? Like, what human being is going to be successful being required to push through or ignore the real live experiences of your anxiety or anxious experiences in a space where you're supposed to learn? Like, that's that feels, for lack of better words, cruel.
And then there's this is to make you freer. And it's like, I don't feel freer. I feel more locked in. So maybe I'm going to shun education at some point. Yeah. Maybe I'm going to say, I didn't enjoy the heart beating out of the chest, my neck and veins flushing as I'm waiting for my turn to come up in popcorn reading, and I say a word the wrong way, and the whole class is laughing at me. And I had my moments in earlier grades. By high school, I was like, never again. But it was still those those moments I recognize I procrastinated too much. I put things off that were not meant to be put off. I made big projects, these ideas of I could do a big gulp and reading certain books in the last 2 weeks of summer, when you had 3 of them, and you got to come up with critical theories about them. SparkNotes was a friend, but it wasn't that great. Separated me from plenty of A's, but that is the beauty of life.
Yeah.
And I want to give this as well. I am currently in Detroit, Michigan, for the first time in my experience. First time in Detroit. Met a lot of beautiful people here in this trip. On this trip, Jamel Randall, owner of the Trap Studio, a yoga space where I'm just getting all of those confirmations as I do in this journey. He reminded me and the rest of the class that this is all practice. And I laugh because the moments where I stop thinking it's practice have been the ones where my anxiety comes to me. It's when I feel like I have a point to prove, and that's been something that I bring up a lot in our conversations as of late, where it's like, this is practice.
Yeah.
The first one we did was practice. And it's this conscious recognition and gratitude where it's like, why would it ever not be practice? It's like we're free, and that popcorn read is practice. Unfortunately, sometimes others in the space, in the environment, can push a pressure on us that makes us believe we have something to prove. Oh, how could you mess that word up? You're so stupid. How could you do that interview and not ask more questions? That was so weird. Why, like, so these things, socially, I've laughed at the denial of peer pressure. Nobody's pressuring me. I'm like, even in your success, you're being pressured. Like, even in your success, it's pressures because, and I don't want to say I'll say in my success, at times, it was pressures to prove a point that I'll continue to succeed. I'll continue to do the podcast. I'll continue to travel. It's like, if I'm doing it from that space, I'm lacking love. I'm going empty quicker than I would like to. I'm denying rest. And moments with rest is like, hey, think about me more.
Yeah.
So I find joy in this very moment. I find joy in knowing that if I'm not at that standard that I've just spoke of, right? If we're not there together, right? In that space of recognizing this practice, I can always jump back to it because it's so fluid. There's moments where I do want to prove a point. And there's moments where I'm like, I proved it. But I didn't because I was already proven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bless up.
I think the connection that I'm making here, as I hear you talk, is like, what's the goal of forced effort when it's not required? It's not required. I think the piece about practice is fun, just because like it's the idea that you get 1% better each time, and that's something that we try to model here at the virtual reading clinic. Is that like, yeah, like, are we trying to make you or support you to become, the most, the greatest reader tomorrow?
All right.
Maybe,
but you can.
maybe, but the idea is that like you get 1% better every day. We build your confidence. Our students get better over time, every single day, just the same way that we grow our skill set every single day. But it does require the piece around practice.
Indeed.
And if you come to the space with the mindset as a learner, and that's what we want to do in life generally, I think we get a chance to model that inside of the classroom or a tutoring space sometimes. It's like, what does it look like to be a learner? What does it look like to truly engage in the art of practice?
Right.
What does practice entail? I mean, practice entails falling. And
Indeed. Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
A lot of times.
And that's one of the things I really like about like one of the parts of our reading tutoring block is that we do shared reading, but it's multiple reads of the same small passage. And the goal is for you to see yourself get better just through, we're not going to try to read this whole book or this whole chapter, maybe not even this whole paragraph. What we're trying to do is target a particular skill that you see yourself getting better at over time because you are using a strategy.
Yes.
And when that happens, you build what we call self-efficacy or your confidence over time. That has a rising tide effect in every area of life. Like you see yourself, I'll tell a story about one of my favorite students. His name is King. King was a rising 6th grader when we started working with him, and he struggled with reading. I would say that he would identify definitely as a learner, definitely as someone who loves to learn, but like reading was just not always accessible for him until he got a chance to actually get real strategies for decoding words. And he saw himself increasingly becoming confident to read anything that he laid his eyes on. That was in the reading space. The rising tide effect came in the other areas of his life as a middle schooler, where he is now showing up confident in the academic space in the classroom, but like his social relationships with peers, his relationships with teachers started to strengthen just because he felt more confident to be in this space called school, because he felt more confident to unlock things that he previously wasn't able to do before. Even more rising tide effect. Who cares about school, right? We care about the things that we want to care about. He cares about sports at this point. Confident enough to be able to go after something that he otherwise probably wouldn't have done before. Like he's the captain of his track team. Just because, and I don't want to kind of say it's just because he's a stronger reader today, but I think
very impactful.
Yeah.
The funny part that I used to sit with is I would read a book and have new words to play with.
Yeah.
I would read a book
Like real talk.
and I can speak clear. Like I like to read out loud when I was growing up. I would sit there and like, oh, and my house was very loud too at times. So there's blaring music, or I'm just somewhere where I don't feel like I can hear, like I can't focus. So that's mini speeches. That is what's prepping people to speak publicly. And unfortunately, like we're in an era where public speaking is a number one fear. Like we've gone from no popcorn read at all, in some instances, to some like a point where some students aren't speaking in the class. They don't actually say anything at all. They don't get called on. They can completely just. I've been in classrooms where students have told me I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that? How do we get beyond that barrier? And the pandemic did leave a lot of impact on youth. I do think about absolutely like King is. It's always fun to see King look at the word and think of the tool. Because I see it in real time. Where he's like, okay, let me sound it out first. That tool doesn't work. This is SM. This is whatever conjunction. And those little things that you don't have, if he didn't have those, that stress and
here's how it showed up for
it's so-
King.
it's so
This is
valuable.
and it's interesting. This is how the stress showed up for King. He would read a passage. He would start off strong out the gate. But started to get fatigued over time because he didn't have the tools at first to decode all the words. And so what do you do when you don't have the tools? You start making up stuff. Why do you make up stuff? Because you want to get through the passage. Why do you want to get through the passage? Because it feels a lot of pressure at the time when somebody's listening to you read. And so when we first started reading together, he would start off strong. And then like after 4 words, he would literally start making up words based on like the first letter sound. And if you really understand like developmental reading, like that's part of it. But part of his choice in doing that as a rising middle schooler is just because he didn't have the tools and it was easier to survive. So we were talking about like survival techniques that kids have. They have lots of them. Like our kids they have lots of navigational capital that we have not on Earth. There are a lot of survival things. But I think the idea though for him was like, hey man, you don't gotta do that no more.
yes, you're free.
Like
I'll free you from
like
that.
let me hey, you don't gotta do that no more. Like you actually can use the patterns, the vowel teams right now. Like how to get a long A sound in the word. When you see an AI together, it gives you the long A sound. Like this, use it, right? And so just feeling empowered to actually use the tool, it just changes the game. It changes the game for a student. But I like King's story just because he's a strong example of like what it looks like to give a tool. See a kid use the tool, and the kid's not gonna stop using the tool. He's gonna.
It's so fun to just see them show up every new session in a newer light. Whether it's I dunked the ball, or I won my karate match.
Yeah.
Or whatever. The tutors, the mentors get to grow with the student. So it's such a all around joyful experience.
It is a joyful experience. It is a joyful experience. I will say for the families too. I mean, we exist. Joy Education exists. Joy Education exists to support students regardless of where they live. So agnostic to your relationship with a school or a community center or whatever, we want to make sure that any kid, no matter their zip code, has access to quality support to become a confident reader. And we do that through very specific things. We start with providing a family with information about how well their student reads. So what are their strengths, what are the opportunities for growth? We do that through our digital reading screener. All online, a kid can read into a microphone and you're able to know how fluent of a reader that student is and the specific skills that they need in order to become a better reader. That's number one. The second thing that we do is we actually give you the tools. We have simplified what it looks like to actually build student skill over time right at home through these digital mini lessons, all on YouTube to support family literacy right at home. And we know that families don't always have the time or maybe not have the confidence or the skill set to support their student with reading. So we got you. We have just-in-time, real-time support for you through our virtual reading clinic. We got tutors. These are college students, these are retired educators, these are community members who really care about kids reading. And our big goal in matching students with those folks is that what we can do over time is we can strengthen the school to career pipeline, the school to college pipeline, just by the exposure. Someone in the community actually cares about you well enough that they're coming to this space to support you with reading. And bonus, you get a chance to learn about their world. They're an engineer over at, insert company, or they go to college down the street, or, they're a retired, police officer, they're a retired, Army vet, what have you, that really just cares. And so you get this exposure at the same time. So that's the real beauty about what we're doing. We're taking a typical school-based solution where we're talking about like reading intervention, and we're taking it outside of the context of the school and we're putting it in the community and wrapping technology around it and training folks to be able to use this so that every student, no matter their zip code, has access to quality reading support using an approach and resources that we know works. When we do that, we will see every student, every family, every community, not just reading, but becoming lifelong learners, not just becoming lifelong learners, actively creating solutions for the challenges that we see in our communities. And so that's the real reason why we exist, is that we are changing the game for what it means for folks, or we're reimagining rather, the way that students and families access quality support for reading. It's not just the school's responsibility. It's not just you as an individual family's responsibility. It's the community as a whole, our responsibility. And so that's what we're doing here at Joy Education. And we're getting 1% better at it every single day. Just in the same way that our students are getting 1% better at reading every single day. As a whole, we're getting 1% better at making sure that every kid has access to it. And so I'm really grateful for you, Marquis, just for like, one, your heart behind it. I think like the vision for Joy Education is like 10 times more accurate, just because your voice is included in it. And I think the same as we invite more and more community folks as a part of it is like, you have your story about Bud Not Bloody. You have your story about popcorn reading. And that fuels your reason for showing up to the space to make sure that students have what I like to think of as a redemptive experience, experience that is different from your typical story that kids hate reading. That doesn't have to be the case. And the way that we make sure that it's not the case is that we put people just like you in the space with our families and students and sharing, hey, we all care about this thing.
Absolutely.
We can all figure out how to make this thing enjoyable and fun for you, confidence building for you, But that's why we exist, man. We are, and I'm gonna just keep rambling here until you tell me to stop talking.
Go, brother.
I mean,
Let them know.
we talk about a student like King. We talk about his grandma that got him connected. You have met a student like Mateo. We talk about the reason
Mi
why.
amigo Mateo es muy inteligente. I'm getting 1% better each day, Mateo.
1% better with your Spanish. No, he would appreciate it. As with his mom. But like we exist because, let's just talk about the reality of the problem space right now. I would call it a problem space. Let's call it an opportunity space. Right now, 1 out of every 5 students has a language-based learning disability, like dyslexia, where reading, writing, and spelling is difficult for them. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just, it happens to be difficult for them. What that means, going back to what we said a little bit earlier, is that our approach needs to shift, given the fact that 20% of our population, generally speaking, needs a different approach to learning how to read. And so what we're doing here is we are not treating those students as though like they are an anomaly. What we're doing is we're creating a safety net. Why? Because we don't screen. We don't screen for student reading needs in the way that we need to.
This was the thing I really enjoyed when we spoke about the screening process.
Yeah.
I didn't sit with the reality that you have to sit one-on-one with each student, having to go through all of these checks and balances. Having a tool, a diagnostic tool, having a tool, a digital tool, where you get all of this information at once.
Yeah.
You can sift through it and point out the markers and strategically pinpoint these things.
Yeah.
It could always be available, but to have that.
Yeah. But the challenge is it's not. The challenge is not.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not. But it's like now that it is, and that is that takes it to another level where it's like, okay, there's 100 students in here.
Yeah.
If we have to go through the first 4 months of school trying to figure out all of these things that are going to be recurring, like, we can figure this out in the first 3 days.
Yeah.
With the right system.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of things that's happening. One, it's easier to get a screening for dyslexia once you're incarcerated than you can in the actual school system. I think like that's problematic. Not that we want to screen every student for dyslexia. I think that's not the goal because it does take time and resources away from learning when everyone's sitting all day getting tested. But we do need to know who needs support. So I do believe that we should find out a way, and that's why we have our digital screener to provide families, let's put it that way, families with the information that they need in order to make decisions about what's best for their student.
And empowering families.
Empowering families. Right now, whenever we do a reading test in school, that information is largely gated for educators to have these conversations about what this means for students and miss the whole family, right? And then when we do have a conversation with the family, we're not really specific about the things that a student needs to work on in order for a family to identify the best resource, whether it's in the school or outside of the school. So what we want to do is we want to provide a simple way for you to get the information that tells you about your students' strengths and opportunities, because you might not be having these conversations, or you might not have the trusting relationship with the educator at your kid's school to have this like in-depth conversation about what your student might need.
And as educators, we have seen firsthand the knowledge that gets withheld.
Yeah.
Because I've been in meetings where it's like, oh, we're not going to tell them this because they'll react in this way. And it's like,
yeah.
I mean, we don't really have a say in how they'll react because this is their child.
Or we use language in those conversations that might mean something for us in this space, but might not mean the same thing for folks outside. Like when we say decode, when we say sound out, like really actually figuring out what does this letter by itself make? What does this letter when it's paired with this letter make? Like that's what, but who's actually sitting down with our families to actually have a conversation about it? Because that could change the game about the decision that they make about the resource for the summertime, right, after school, what have you. And so that's what we want to do first, is we want to provide the right information for you to be able to decide what support is best for your student next. And again, like the reason is because most of our students are going to need like some additional support. We said 1 out of 5 students has a language-based learning disability like dyslexia. That's, usually we don't screen for those things until someone is incarcerated. The challenge with not really knowing who needs a different type of support is that we don't provide that type of support. And so what we are offering here is assume that the research is right, that 20% of your classroom at any point in time is going to need something different. In fact, the reason why 66%, 2/3 of our 4th graders are going to require additional reading support in order to be ready for college and careers is because what we're not assuming is that they all need the additional support inside of the classroom. And we're teaching in a specific way that teaches to, let's call it what it is, teaches to the middle. And it's not using an approach to reading that really captures students who actually need direct instruction around how to actually decode, direct instruction with fluency. And I'm using a lot of language that might not mean a ton for people, but what we mean by decoding is really like, how do I actually know how to sound out this word? Because I know the letter sound correspondence, I know letter patterns, I know, things of that nature. And so what we're wanting to do is really equip families with the information to be able to choose. The digital curriculum is on purpose. One of the things I strongly remember about being in the classroom is that we totally ignored families when it came to empowering them or supporting them to be able to support their kid at home, especially with something like reading, right? Again, I'm going back to the same data that we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of like, who are our students? Some of them are 1st and 2nd generation readers. And so when we think about literacy, we have to think about family literacy. If we're not thinking about like our resources and tools to support families through actual resources that they can plug and play, training and development, you know what I'm saying? Then like I think we're missing out on an opportunity to really support a student, because again, the school cannot do it by itself. There's not enough time.
There's so many hands involved. There's so many factors that are needed. And one of my biggest frustrations as an educator was watching parental relationships fall. Like that teacher-parent relationship is so needed, so necessary. Just says it's in a bag, so we'll cut it. But yeah, sorry. It is all good. It is all good. I'm laughing at myself. But yes, It's all right. It's all right, Rose. But yes.
I like how she changed the muffle.
We've unpacked a lot.
Yeah.
We've unpacked a lot. We've talked a lot about things that we talk a lot about. For anybody out there that is wanting to know more, you can go to joyeducationfoundation.org.
Nope. Joyeducation.org. There you go.
We cut the foundation. No, the foundation is Instagram. Joy Education Foundation is the Instagram.
Yep, Joy Education Foundation, Instagram.
Joyeducation.org. I'm going to link it, clearly. But yes, we have covered a lot of bases. Empowerment of families is what we're invested in. These families are our families. This is our community as a whole. My trips as of late from Tacoma, Washington to Detroit, Michigan to Philly to New York, and hearing these similar stories, these similar things I'm seeing on social media and then seeing them in person. Not only are we missing resources in the schools, we're missing real-time resources in community, where buildings are gone, where history is being taken away, where libraries are closing.
Yeah.
And this is a moment to step into the digital space with a greater sense of agency.
Yeah, and I think also to like step into the digital space with a greater sense of agency, but also like kind of reframing like who plays a part in that, right? We've always centered like the learning around our schools, but we've forgotten a lot about like these dope community organizations that our students and families are already connected to, where the trust is there, the resources are there, the relationships are there. I think about, we work with schools, sure. We work with families, absolutely directly. But we also strategically work with our Boys and Girls Clubs, our YMCAs, our churches, our Parks and Recreation, because those are places where students are already coming, relationships are already there, they have caring adults there. They sometimes need a bit of capacity building in order to support with something like literacy. And we got you. We can do that really, really well. We fit right within after school program hours. We fit right in weekend program hours, summertime as well. Right within your rotations, as we are building student athleticism, as we're building student entrepreneur skills, as we're building student art skills, we're building student literacy skills. You just mentioned the Trap Yoga Studio here in Detroit, Michigan. Like, great, dope community organization, dope programming both for adults and students. And we get a chance to work alongside them, work in lockstep with the impact that they're already making, with the reach that they're already making, to make sure that those students and families also have access to this literacy support by extension of the relationship. And so I think this model that we've propped up, that we're implementing, I think is an example for us to be able to do across this nation, where we are connecting the community across organizations, across, the type of organization, if you will, in order to make this impact. And I think it works.
Yes, indeed.
I think kids benefit from it.
Absolutely. I love to read. I just want to put that out there for anybody. I love my time to read. I do. I just do. I also understand. I said do. That's something that I picked up from the place I'm from. But I just realized we will not do this alone. We will not do this alone. So I always say this thing, one day made better as many days made greater. I'm uplifting you to be in a world that cares. If I keep it to myself, I think that is unfair. The joys we've been given are best when shared. Visionaries never die, legends survive. There's seeds we sow daily, we get better with time. I am a guy from a place, CharmCityBipper, Quis the Sleepy, and this is
Demetrius Lancaster, founder and CEO of Joy Education Foundation. Check us out, www.joyeducation.org, on Instagram and Facebook, Joy Education Foundation. Excited to connect with you. Also on YouTube, Joy Education Foundation. I appreciate you, brother.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Built in private, less in public. Bippity.
I love it. That's dope.
Yeah. We were searching for the right way, did a lot of wrong. Can't go back, Gotta move on, gotta move forward. Corrections given and accept that living still brings pain. Even when you're moving with the best intentions and you're blessed with visions of joy, bliss, peace. Gratitude for every day I live to speak and I live to breathe in growth and abundance.